When it comes to project management, there's one skill that can truly be the difference between a massive success and a total train wreck, and that's mastering risk. Just imagine this for a second. Your project is going perfectly. I mean, every single milestone is hit, the plan seems flawless, your team is fired up, and you are on track, on time, and on budget. It's the dream, right? And then, out of nowhere, bam, a key deliverable is late, a deadline gets missed. You feel that little bit of stress start to creep in, but you tell yourself, it's okay, we can recover from this. But then the next shoe drops. An unexpected cost pops up, and that budget you planned so carefully starts to balloon. Okay, now the pressure is really mounting. And just when you think it absolutely cannot get any worse, a critical system crashes. The whole project just grinds to a halt. Now you're not just stressed, you're facing total chaos. So you're left standing there thinking, wait a minute, everything was planned out perfectly. What on earth went wrong? Well, what you just experienced is the devastating impact of unmanaged risk. Those sneaky, unexpected events that can completely derail even the most solid plans. So to get a handle on these things, we first have to understand what they really are. What exactly is a project risk? And more importantly, how is it any different from just a regular old problem? Okay, so in the world of project management, a risk is an uncertain event that, and this is the key part, if it happens, could affect your project. That word uncertain is everything. It means it hasn't happened yet. And here's a fun twist. The effect isn't always bad. It could be negative, like a system crash, or it could actually be positive, like a new piece of tech becomes available way ahead of schedule. Here's the most important difference you need to remember. A risk is something that might happen in the future. A problem is something that has already happened. The whole point of risk management is to get ahead of these things and deal with risks before they have a chance to become full-blown problems. So how do we actually do that? Well, we don't just cross our fingers and hope for the best. We use a structured 5-step process. Think of this as your roadmap for navigating uncertainty. And hey, for any of you studying for an exam, this section is absolutely crucial. The process has a really nice logical flow. First, you identify all the potential risks. Then, you analyze them. After that, you prioritize the ones that matter most, create a plan to mitigate them, and finally, you monitor them throughout the whole project. Let's break each of these down. Step 1 is all about brainstorming. You get your team in a room and you just list out everything, and I mean everything that could possibly go wrong. We're talking potential delays, weird technical glitches, budget problems, maybe a key person on your team quits. Just get it all out on the table. No idea is too crazy at this point. Okay, next up, step 2. We take that big list and we analyze it. For every single risk, you ask 2 simple questions. 1, what's the probability of this actually happening? And 2, what's the impact if it does? For example, something like a major server crash might have both a high probability and a ridiculously high impact. Look, you can't fix everything at once. It's just not realistic. So step 3 is all about prioritizing. You need to focus your time and energy on the biggest threats first, those risks that have both a high probability of happening and would have a massive impact on your project. And that brings us to the action step, mitigation. This is where you actually develop your game plan. You've got 4 main strategies to choose from. You can try to avoid the risk entirely. You can reduce its chances or its impact. You can transfer it to someone else, like buying insurance, or you can just accept it and have a solid backup plan ready to go. And finally, we have step 5, monitoring. This is so important because this is not a one-and-done task. Risk management is a continuous process. You have to constantly keep an eye on the risks you've identified, be on the lookout for new ones, and regularly check in on your plans to make sure they're still going to work.
This whole thing really reminds me of that saying, risk management is like carrying an umbrella. Even when it's sunny, you might feel a little silly, but you're prepared. And it is always, always better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So what kinds of risks should you even be looking for in that big brainstorming session? Well, every project is different, of course, but most risks tend to fall into a few common buckets. Let's meet the usual suspects.
First up, you've got your technical risks. These are things like a system failure or some unexpected software bugs that just throw your whole timeline out of whack. Then you have financial risks, things like budget overruns or suppliers suddenly jacking up their prices. And finally, there are operational risks, which cover everything from not having enough people to do the work to just plain poor communication within the team.
Okay, enough with the theory.
Let's see how this whole process actually works in the real world, and we'll even look at a few common mistakes that you'll definitely want to avoid. Let's use a super simple, super common example. The risk is that one of your key developers might quit halfway through the project. The potential impact? Huge. So what's the solution? A simple mitigation strategy. You train a backup developer who also knows the system inside and out. That way, if your star player leaves, the project can keep moving forward with minimal disruption. See? It's a proactive solution to a potential problem. Knowing the process is great, but putting it into practice correctly means you have to avoid some common traps. The biggest mistakes I see teams make are ignoring risks because they think they're too small, not bothering to create a real backup plan for their biggest risks, and probably the worst one, just not monitoring the situation consistently. All right, let's pull all of this together into a nice, clean summary. This is the key stuff you're going to want to remember whether you're walking into an exam or your next big project meeting.
And to help you lock this process in your brain, I've got a super simple memory trick for the 5 steps. Just remember IAPMM. That's identify, analyze, prioritize, mitigate, and monitor. Say it with me, IAPMM. That's your 5-step mantra for handling pretty much any uncertainty a project can throw at you. I want to leave you with this one final thought because it's so incredibly true. Projects don't usually fail because the plan was bad. They fail because the potential problems, the risks, were seen on the horizon and they were ultimately ignored. Proactive risk management isn't just a checklist. It's the entire mindset that separates the projects that succeed from the ones that fall apart.